All right, Brexit is law. It's scheduled for October 31st. But for those following the drama out of the House of Commons, you already know that opposition MPs are trying to overturn that law by pushing the date yet again to January 31st of 2020. Now, the House of Lords has recently allowed this legislation to move forward. So now what? To answer that, let's turn to former UK MP George Galloway. So, George, will this new legislation receive royal assent? Can you explain all of this to us?
Yes, well, it isn't a law until the Queen signs it, and I can tell you that she now has signed it. So it is a law. So what we have now is the irresistible force and the immovable object. Both Houses of Parliament, appended now with the Queen's signature, say that the government must ask for an extension. The government say that they will not do so, and time is running out for a resolution of that affair. And of course, when time runs out, i.e. on Halloween at 11 p.m. in the evening, then that's it. We're out of the European Union. All manner of things could happen, of course, between now and then. The Prime Minister could go to Brussels but not ask for an extension. One or more members of the European Union could refuse an extension. The government say that they will stay within the law, but that they will test the law. And of course, in the few days available, the Supreme Court of the United Kingdom would have to move into action pretty swiftly to adjudicate on that. If they found the government was in fact behaving unlawfully, the Prime Minister could go to jail in handcuffs, doing the perp walk, as you say. All of that, of course, will be viewed differently by British voters depending on the stand they take on Brexit. So this is utterly unprecedented, uncharted waters, and the clock is ticking, Manila.
This is just wacky, George. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, this is something out of like a Benny Hill skit, if you ask me. But how has this revolt by the so-called Rebel Alliance, how has that transpired if Parliament was supposed to be on this extended recess until mid-October with the Queen's approval, no less?
Well, of course, it doesn't go into recess, prorogation they call it, until this evening. And so all of this Rebel Alliance achievement was achieved in the last few days of the Parliament. So you might well ask, why did Boris Johnson decide on an extra 5-6 days of prorogation in the first place, if it wasn't going to stop what has indeed happened? That seems to me a tactical misjudgment by him. But Parliament always prorogues at this time of the year. We've now got the party conference season, the Trade Union Congress this week, and then followed by the Labour Conference, Conservative, Liberal Democrat, and so on. So it's only an extra 5, maybe 6 days in which they would otherwise have been sitting. But it has, of course, put the cat amongst the pigeons, and to no avail, because the Rebel Alliance was able to pass this law in record quick time. In any case, whether Johnson is prepared to go to jail, whether he's got something up his sleeve, well, we'll have to wait and see. I personally think he does have something up his sleeve, and if I knew what it was, I would, of course, tell you privately on RT America.
And George, I'd like to examine a strange figure in all of this, and I don't mean Boris Johnson, rather Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. For decades, Corbyn was one of the EU's fiercest critics, George. Now he's kind of carved himself out to be this figure standing in the UK's way of departing the EU. Chat to us about that a bit.
Well, I was with him for all of those decades, standing right next to him. And indeed, he and I and our leader then, the late Mr. Benn, kept the government up all night, many nights, trying to wreck the EU's Maastricht Treaty and its Lisbon Treaty, which gave us the single market, gave us this customs union, gave us free movement of cheap labour, which has depressed wages and conditions for our workforce, which is what led to Brexit in the first place. It's all happenstance. I happen to believe that Mr. Corbyn has not changed his view on the European Union, but all around him have. All his confederates in the Labour leadership have. The trade union leaders have. And above all, the parliamentary arithmetic has. And it has placed him as the #1 opponent of implementing the Brexit referendum decision, which makes him a hero of the salons that would otherwise have torn him down and might well later tear him down. How it's going to play electorally in the 65% of Labour-held constituencies in the country that voted Leave, many of them by enormous Leave majorities, of course remains to be seen. It will profit him nothing to have become briefly a hero of the salons, only to see Labour heavily defeated at the general election whenever it comes.
Yeah, what a fascinating turn in his role here as the central figure in Brexit. And last, yes. George, do you actually see a new election on the horizon? We know that Speaker John Bercow is threatening to stand down come October 31 if there's no general election by then.
Well, he has now formally resigned. If you think about it, they're all going down like ninepins. In just the last few months, prime ministers have gone, cabinet ministers by the dozen, and now the Speaker, who just made a lengthy speech, as is his wont, explaining why he's going at the general election or on October 31, whichever comes sooner. Yes, there has to be an election because the government cannot govern and the opposition are not in a position to govern. And if you're trying to stop Brexit and stop the people voting in a general election at the same time, well, frankly, you're only postponing the inevitable. So definitely there will be an election. If not in October, then in November, when the nights are dark and cold and wet, and the result, I suspect, will not be to the liking of those blocking an election in October.
Very interesting turn of events. As always, appreciate your expertise in this. George Galloway, thank you.